What's up, Met fans? Welcome back to Talkin Mets with Rob. How's everybody doing? Right here live with you guys. Tuesday night, 5 o'clock, Mets Hot Stove Live, Mets Offseason News, MLB Union CBA updates. A lot of news to get into. We got the MLB CBA talks that went on 2 days straight, which we're going to talk about. Hall of Fame ballots. We're going to get into who has the votes at the moment and who do you think should be in the Hall of Fame and should not be in the Hall of Fame. We will be discussing that. And we will also be discussing so many rumors that we've heard over the last couple of weeks regarding the Mets. Even though they can't talk to players, there's been a lot of rumblings about the Mets being the second best team to land Clayton Kershaw, and will be an interesting look into that. We'll talk about that. Even though we talked about that last week, we will keep on talking about it now. We'll talk about trade proposals. We will talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. Why? Because this is the hour. This is the 2 hours that we will be here, and we want to ask your questions. You can ask them. We'll try to answer. I'll try to answer them to the best of my abilities. We will go into discussions about everything we need to talk about. Just because there's a lot to talk about doesn't mean we can't talk about other things. I want to talk about what stadiums you have been to, and I will tell you what I have been to. We're going to go through the press conference yesterday with Billy Epler and Buck Showalter, talking about his coaching staff and talking about spring training and what he will be doing once he gets there. So there's a lot to talk about, guys. I'm going to say what's up to everybody in chat in just a minute. But the good news is that it feels like baseball is going to probably get started on time. Spring training, I don't know if it's going to start directly on time, but I do think the season is not going to be in jeopardy. I think they have a lot of leadway. There's been a lot of different negotiations, a lot of tactics to try to get their way, but they seem like they've been making progress. So that's the first thing we're going to talk about. But before we get started, let me say what up to the people. 16 people in the chat at the moment. Al, Nelson, MB, John, Hayden, Merlinful, Sean, Muhammad. What's up? What's up? What's up, guys? Miss you guys too. I see a couple of new people in the chat. People who haven't been here in a while. I'm glad you guys can tune in to one of the live streams. It's always fun to see new people and people I haven't seen in a while. So hopefully you guys stick around and let's talk some Mets baseball. Let's talk about the negotiations and a lot more. Rocky, how are you doing, buddy? All right, guys. So we're going to talk about the first thing that we are going to get into, and that is the most important thing, because no matter what we talk about, it does not matter unless the CBA is signed, sealed, and delivered between the players union and the owners. So MLB Day 2 updates based on what happened yesterday and today. There's been things that were taken off the table, things that were taken on the table. We will get into that in a little bit. Jeff Passan gives you a rundown that I saw on Twitter that I took a screenshot of that I'm going to show you guys right now. So let me just share my screen really, really quick, guys. Just give me 1 second, and we can discuss that as we go through the list. I think it's this one. All right, here we go. Oh, that's not the right one? Yes, it is. All right. So let me move this. All right. So this is what happened today over the meeting. So the first thing, MLB has agreed to accept parameters of a pre-arbitration bonus pool for top 30 walks above replacement. So I don't really care for the WAR stat. I think it's kind of, there's guys that are not that good in the league that have very good WARs. A lot of people live and die by this stat. Some might in this stream right now. But to me, I do not like this stat at all. But if the players want it and they feel like the owners are using it against them, then I guess they can try to get what they can. So if you're in a top 30 WAR, you get a bonus. And MLBPA seeking $105 million league offer. $105 million they're seeking, and the league is offering $10 million. So that's a very, very big gap. But you know what? I don't think that's one of the biggest concerns of the offseason. Just give me a second, guys. All right. Let me just move the banner really quick so you can see everything. All right. So the other thing, MLB offered a minimum raise to $615,000, up from $575,000, and MLBPA wants $775,000. So obviously that's $150,000 gap, but at the end it's close enough where I think they're gonna meet in the middle around $75 million in between, which is around $650,000. I think that is fair for both sides, and it's been the same for minimum salary for a while, so it's important to look at that. And that's another thing off the books that I think is going to get solved probably by this week. They're supposedly going to meet again this week at the end of the week, hopefully sometime Thursday or Friday. So 3 times in a week is progress, and that's the best we can ask for, considering they didn't meet for 40 days. So the last thing is MLB withdrew offer to change the arbitration structure. So that's not surprising, because I think when it comes to service time, free agency within 6 years, the owners are not budging on that. And the players obviously withdrew that yesterday from their offer because they know it's not going to happen. And let's be honest, at the end of the day, even though owners will lose money if the season doesn't start on time, and the owners are willing to miss games during the season, the owners have less to lose than the players. The owners a lot of them make their money elsewhere in other business ventures. Obviously, there is some owners that make their sole money in Major League Baseball, but the majority of the owners have outside income coming in from whatever business they have. The players, on the other hand, yes, they have, you know, uh, endorsements and everything like that. But at the end of the day, the players are not getting paid their salary if the games are not played. They don't start making game money until the season starts. They don't make money during spring training. So during the season, losing games is a big problem for the players. That's a huge problem. So that's why I think the players, as much as they think they have a stranglehold on this negotiation, they do not. Because the owners can say, well, we'll lock you out the whole season and you can make your money elsewhere if you can. So, there's a lot of guys that make a lot of money. Look at all the signings. There's been a tremendous amount of money spent in free agency. I mean, geez, Max Scherzer at 37 years old is making $43 million for the Mets. I mean, you don't think he wants to be on the field? Yes, he made over $200 million in a whole lot of money in his career, but nobody will want to lose out on $43 million. So at the end of the day, the players have the most to lose. So the players aren't going to get everything they asked for. And at the end of the day, the owners are going to win this battle. Again, the big thing about the one that I want to talk about is the MLB offer minimum salary is interesting because it will affect some teams that are just on the border of the luxury tax threshold. There might be a few players that are making minimums that if they get bumped up $100,000 and that's 2 or 3 players, that's a little bit that can hurt the luxury tax on their payroll. Obviously, it's not a lot of teams. It's maybe 1 or 2, but it does affect teams. We got to see. There's probably not going to be a floor minimum for salary. Maybe they will, maybe they're not. I don't know. The luxury tax is probably going to get lowered or stay the same. It's not going to go higher. I don't think the owners want that. The players do. I don't think they're going to get that. So there's 3 things that I think is going to be easily negotiable and easily obtained by both sides that agree upon. And that is the minimum salary. I think it's going to be $650,000. The 14-team playoffs, what I'm not a fan of, but they both agree. Then if it gets baseball started, I'm fine with it. And the other one is the DH. So there's 3 things there that I think is going to be easily agreed upon. It's just the other 3 or 4 things that are big things that I think are going to take probably another week or 2 to get solved. But as long as they're able to get a deal done by the first week in February, spring training will start on time because everybody doesn't show up until February 16th. And that's when you have to be there because that's when spring training games are going to get lost. And I don't think the owners are going to extend spring training because that will push back the season a few games. And I don't think they want to do that. The players, again, this is another reason why the players are not really in control of this negotiation because if the players don't come to an agreement with the owners, the whole thing when it comes to the players complained about not having enough time to ramp up during the pandemic year. It got a lot of players hurt, and they were mad about that. The players don't want to go into spring training a week or 2 later and the season starts at the same time because, as we know, spring training is all about the pitches and ramping them up. So that is the first bit of news that we had to talk about. So let's see. I see the comments are flowing in, guys. Sorry about that. Trying to get up in all. All right. I know you guys seen my my poll about Diaz. And I'm going to get to you guys questions and your comments in a second. So that is your first bit of news when it comes to the MLB lockout update. Ricky from Puerto Rico, what's up? Rocky, how you doing? Steven, how you doing? Devin, how you doing? Who else we got here? All right, guys. So let me just check the comments really quick, see if I miss anybody. You can't complain. Hayden, what's up, brother? All right, let's see what we got. Nelson calls me the man of the hour. I don't know about that, but I'm here. All right. Raymond, what's up, buddy? Rocky says Diaz should be traded. So this is going to be about the poll that I put up there. I haven't checked the poll. Maybe I should, because I'm using a different streaming app so I can't really look at my poll. But the last time I checked it, I think it was like 15 votes, and about 75% says Diaz should be the closer in 2022. Rocky says Diaz should be traded. There's a lot of teams I would probably take Diaz in a heartbeat. And there's not a lot of teams in this league that can have the arm like Diaz has. I know he's a explosion waiting to happen, but again, he got better last year. He was definitely better than 2019. So that's an upgrade. And I think another year, I think is going to help him. So we just have to wait and see. And like I said, Diaz is not going anywhere. Maybe the Mets will get a guy who can, pick up the slack if things don't go right for Diaz early on, because Buck Showalter ain't going to play that game like Rojas did and Callaway did. Callaway and Rojas kept on throwing him out there, and letting him fail and continue to let him fail. And Buck Showalter is not going to do that. He sees problems with Diaz. He is not going to give him, put it this way, Diaz is not going to have a long leash. Is that simple? So you're going to see guys like Castro get a shot at a couple of closing out games. You're going to get Lugo. You're going to get May. You're going to get guys like that. And depending on who else you bring in via trade or via free agency, they might have those options to pick and choose who they want to close games if Diaz is not performing. So I think there is a lot of different opportunities for the Mets to give other guys opportunities. Like I said, the problem with Lugo, and we've talked about this for a couple of years now, with his partially torn UCL, he cannot pitch back-to-back, 3 days in a row. He can't do that. Even if he's going to be the closer, he can pitch one inning. I can see Diaz coming in 3 straight games. I can't see Lugo doing that. And that's the problem with Lugo being a starter or a closer. That's why he is mid-relief, who is a guy, if you need him for one game and the starter is struggling and he's got to come in the 6th and 7th inning to shut things down, he'll come in. Or pitch the 7th and 8th, he can do that. But then he pitches 2 innings, he might not be available for the next 2 games. So as much as Lugo is valuable, he doesn't pitch enough for me to expect him to be a closer. And the other thing with Lugo is, he was hurt a lot last year. He wasn't as good as last year. He wasn't as dominant as we've seen him in years past. So Diaz, unfortunately, at this moment, is going to be the closer. And you have to trust him. At this moment, I don't trust him. But you know what? There's other things the Mets should be worrying about right now, and that is the middle of their bullpen, which is a problem because we lost Loop. There is no more Gesellman. We don't know about Familiar. So there's holes in this bullpen that we have to fill. And, there's a lot of guys out there. Chafin, Tarpley. There's a lot of guys. So we just have to wait and see. When this lockout ends, it's going to be a fury of free agency, a fury of trades in about a week and a half when this happens, because spring training is right around the corner. Al, do you think there has been one-on-one talks behind the scenes? Oh, yeah. You know what? Listen, we always hear this about the NBA that with tampering, that there's only in the NBA, which I think they do a really good job of, there's a 2-week grace period where teams and players can talk. They can't talk before that. But we always hear that there's always under the table talks. And I do think that's what's going on with. That's why there's rumors all about that you always hear about. Like, why is there rumors about the Mets being the second best team to land Clayton Kershaw? Because agents talk. You don't trust me. Just because a team can't talk to a player directly, that does not mean they can't talk to the agents under the table. They are. They all are. Because there's no way you don't talk at all for 2 months and then all of a sudden the phone starts ringing and you're going to start off where you left off. It's just impossible. So there is a lot of things that goes under the table. So it's just that simple. You don't run all these leagues do that And, some might get fined because of it, and it might come out later on. But at the end of the day, MLB, believe me, Major League Baseball knows that things are going on under the table talk-wise. Because I guarantee you, the day the lockout ends, you're going to hear of signings and probably trades right away that same day. Because teams have been talking to players. Teams have been speaking to other teams. You got to remember, teams can speak to other teams about trades. Just because they can't speak about the players' names in press conferences or on Twitter or on social media, or their rosters are not there with their faces, teams can speak to teams about other players under the table. It's just they're doing that. So it's just simple as that. The Yankees going after Diaz. Oh, that would be interesting, but I don't think the Mets would actually ever do a trade that would, even if the Mets and the Yankees would benefit from the trade. Now, let's say if the Yankees needed a closer, they don't trust Chapman, and the Mets need a second baseman, and the Mets are willing. Now, if you look at the Diaz and Torres contracts, they're still under control for 3 more years, so it's an even swap when it comes to basically money. So an even swap, the Yankees get their closer, the Mets get their second baseman, and now they're both benefiting from that, right? Now, the Mets need a closer at that point, but at the end of the day, it benefits both teams. I still don't think the Mets and the Yankees are going to do that, because if that trade blows up in either one of the team's faces, say if Diaz goes to the Yankees and he implodes and he's terrible, Yankee fans are going to kill Cashman for making that trade and giving up on a potential star in Torres. And the same thing with the Mets. If Torres just blows up and is not good and Diaz is great, Met fans are going to kill Epler for making that trade. So they would never do that. As much as it might benefit both teams, even if both players end up pretty good for their respected team, I don't think it's going to happen. It's too risky for both sides. Steven says, I want Kenley Jansen. I don't trust Jansen. If you looked at it in years past, and even in the last couple of years with the Dodgers, he's been very shaky. He's been injury prone. He's had that heart condition, which is unfortunate health-wise, that I don't trust either. I don't think you can give a guy like Kenley Jansen, who is a closer, by the way. The Mets are not going to sign him as a closer. He's going to want closer money. I don't think the Mets are going to go that far, because if they're going to pay Jansen closer money to be an 8th inning guy, they might as well just give money to Loop. And Kenley Jansen, I don't know if he can pitch in the 7th or 8th inning and be productive. I think he's like an Edwin Diaz type. I think if you put him in the 9th inning, his mind is focused. If you put him in any other inning, he loses focus. He loses concentration. And he's basically a bigger Edwin Diaz. That's just my opinion. I don't think Kenley Jansen to the Mets, it just makes any sense, Steven. I don't know. Like I said, with the arm that Diaz has and the stuff that he has, I think it's all mental with him. I think if he can mentally get things right, I think he'll be great. But let's be honest, there's no closer in this game. Maybe one in maybe Josh Hader, Iglesias. There's maybe 2 guys in this entire league that you can trust as a closer. So even teams that are projected to be odds on favorite to win the World Series, even they don't have a dominant closer. So at the end of the day, there's not a lot of teams that have closers that you can trust. And let's be honest, the teams that have had the best closer in baseball over the last couple of years, Iglesias and Hader, how far have the Brewers got? The Angels haven't even made the playoffs. So at the end of the day, if you put a good enough team around your bullpen, there's a pretty good chance that you can outperform and win games without having your bullpen implode every night. I think our bullpen, for the most part, is solid. I do like May. I think he's going to have a pretty good year once again. That was a good signing a year ago. I still trust I trust Diaz to the point where I think he's going to have about 30 saves plus. I think Familia is going to come back on a 1-year deal and probably a team second year where the team has the option to not re-sign him. So it really depends on what you put around them. I think Lugo was going to bounce back. He didn't pitch a lot. He was hurt. Daily Mets coverage, what's up? I will give you a shout out. Daily Mets coverage, there you go right there. Shouting out. He sent me a comment, so I will shout him out. So when it comes to Diaz, I know a lot of people are down on him. A lot of Mets fans are down on him. But you have to understand, there is 27 or 28 more teams in Major League Baseball and fans all over the league that are complaining that they don't have a closer and are complaining about their closer. So at least we have the opportunity of Diaz figuring it out. And if he does that, the Mets are a team to be reckoned with. And it's just that simple. And that's just with the roster currently constructed. That's not including what they're going to do bullpen-wise, or add to the rotation, or add a Chris Bryant or Luis Castillo, or trade for a Jose Ramirez or something of that nature. So the Mets have the opportunity to, right now with the current construction of this team, I think the Mets win total at this moment, constructed right now, if they don't make no other moves, and it looks like what it does now, I think the Mets are a 92 win team. Just like that, only because I think Marte is an upgrade over Conforto and Dominic Smith in the outfield. Putting over Nimmo into right or left field, depending on where he's going to play, I think mentally is going to help him even more, because he's not going to be crashing into the wall in center field. And I think, guarding left field and right field is a little bit easier than patrolling the big cavernous center field in Citi Field. So that's going to help Nimmo. I think Escobar is an upgrade at third base no matter who's playing there. He's even an upgrade over Villar, who had a really good year. He's obviously an upgrade over J.D. Davis. He's very good defensively. He's a professional hitter who's going to bat you, 250, 260, but he has the potential to hit 30 home runs. And he's just a professional hitter. And putting him in, in 6th or 7th in this lineup, I think is only going to help Alonso. Is only going to help Lindor. It's going to help whoever else is going to be in this lineup, depending on what moves the Mets make. So I think at the moment, the Mets are on a 90 to 92 win team. But you also have to remember, not just looking at the Mets roster. You have to look at the NL East as well. We play these guys 19 times, right? I don't know what the Braves are doing. They're playing games with Freeman. If the Braves lose Freeman, they're in trouble. At this moment, they have no outfield. All their outfielders are free agents. All the guys who basically won the World Series for them. The Nationals are rebuild. The Phillies haven't done nothing. And as good as Harper was, the Phillies still had no pitching other than Wheeler. Nola was trash. Everybody else in that rotation was terrible. Their bullpen was terrible. So I don't know what the Phillies, unless the Phillies make really big moves, I don't think the Phillies are going to be that good. The Marlins are always pesky, but they're not a good team. So it seems to me that the Mets can win a lot of games within their own division. And we can beat up on the Nationals. If the Mets finally get things right, they can beat up on the Marlins. So there's, 19 games between those teams. If I'm doing my math correctly, 38 games between those two teams. If we can win 75% of those games between those two teams, you already have 20 plus wins just against those teams. So you got to find another 70 games to win games and to help out your overall record. So I do think that the Mets have the opportunity right now with their roster currently constructed to have 90 to 92 wins because of the NL East not being as good as, I guess you could say, projected. Nobody thought the Nationals were going to trade everybody away. So, The Cubs are in basically rebuild mode. Pittsburgh's terrible. I'm not sure what the Reds are doing. There's a lot of teams in the National League that are not very good, and the Mets can take full control over that. So no, I will not sign Kenley Jansen because he is going to want closer salary, and I do not closer money, and I do not think the Mets would give him closer money because he's not going to be the closer, and I can't trust him in the 7th or 8th inning because he's proved in the Dodgers organization that he cannot pitch anywhere but the 9th inning, and we know Diaz can't do it, so it's just going to be a conflict of interest, and it doesn't make sense to use that money that you could have used with Loop to give to Kenley Jansen. Daily coverage. I want Chris Bryant. Yeah. Listen, I've been saying that for almost over a year already. I think the Mets should have traded for him last season. I don't think that the Mets are. I think the Mets are the favorites to get Chris Bryant, in my opinion. I don't think the Giants already said it that they're not willing to go give $100+ million to Chris Bryant. So I don't think there's a lot of teams out there. Maybe the Phillies can surprise us and go after Chris Bryant. Dave Dombrowski, the GM of the Phillies, he's always a guy that comes out of nowhere and makes a big signing every offseason or makes a big trade every offseason. So we got to be careful with that. But I think the Mets are the favorites to land Chris Bryant. Al, so would you go after Kimbrel? I've seen Kimbrel pitch in the 7th and 8th inning with the Braves, with the White Sox, with the Cubs. So I think I would trust Kimbrel later in non-closure situations because I've seen it. So I'm thinking, if I really have to think about it, to be honest, I would say, yeah, but what are you going to give up? Kimbrel, I think, has another 2 years on his contract, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just check that out really quick. Give me a second. All right, let's see what what his contract is. All right, so he's got one more year left on his deal, and this is this year at $16 million. So obviously, if the White Sox trade him, the Mets are probably going to take on all that money, or it depends. If the White Sox are willing to give Kimbrel away and take half of that salary, now the Mets have to give up probably a top 10 prospect, maybe between 7 and 10 or 6 to 10, or the White Sox, on one of the fan pages, on fan blogs on the with the White Sox, they were talking about Jeff McNeil for Kimbrel. I do that trade. If it's just Jeff McNeil, I do that trade. I think Kimbrel will benefit more to this team than McNeil does because I don't think McNeil can go back to the player that he was in the first part of 2019 and what he was in 2018. We got a 300 hitter now, and that's Marte, right? McNeil can't be a guy who's batting 6th or 7th in a lineup because he's useless in that position. McNeil is a 1 or 2 hitter. And at this moment, currently constructed, Marte and Nimmo are going to be a 1-2. So McNeil is basically, we talked about this last year. When Brandon Nimmo was doing good and Lindor was in that 2-hole for most of the year, McNeil was batting 6th and 7th and 5th. It didn't work because he's not a power hitter. And in those situations in 5, 6, or 7th, we need a guy who's between the 5th and 7th in the order who can get on base, hit gap to gap. Not a guy who got to hit swings for the fences. And that's what McNeil turned into. And let's be honest now. We have a 300 hitter in Marte. He's going to hit 300, or at least close to a 295, 300. So that's a guy right there that basically replaces Jeff McNeil because he can put up the same amount of numbers that Jeff McNeil can. Yes, he's a few years older. He is obviously more expensive, but at the end of the day, if you can get a pretty damn good bullpen arm for Jeff McNeil, I think you do it. But, it really depends on what Chicago wants. Chicago is not in rebuild mode, so they're probably not looking for a prospect. They're looking for a guy who can step in and play every day. They're not going to take JD Davis. He's useless to them. They need a second baseman. So Jeff McNeil is a pretty good option. I don't think they're gonna they want Dominic Smith because Dominic Smith is not a good left fielder and he can't play first base because Abreu's there. So I think the only option is Jeff McNeil. Alrighty, what else we got here? I don't. The Mets aren't trading Brandon Nimmo. I truly think that the Mets want Brandon Nimmo long term, and I think they're going to extend him actually. So, Timothy, that's an interesting trade, honestly. But I don't think the Mets or even. I think the White Sox wouldn't mind Brandon Nimmo. That would be a good upgrade for them. But I don't think the Mets are going to be willing to do that because now you basically have no outfield. I know Angel is an outfielder, but he's not, I'd say no, unfortunately. It's a decent, it's interesting players involved, but I would say no. Rocky says the Mets have to stay healthy for once. Yeah, but you could say that about every team, at the end of the day, any team, when it comes to the season, fans always say, if we're healthy, this team's going to be good. But at the end, obviously, the team needs to be healthy. We have question marks in the rotation, right? We don't know about DeGrom. Apparently, it's a partially torn UCL, something like Lugo has and Masahiro Tanaka had for the Yankees. It's a similar injury. Pitchers can pitch through it, but we saw with Tanaka, he lost a little bit off his fastball. He didn't throw as many fastballs as he did before he had that tear. So, Lugo was able to keep his velocity, throw his curveball. He was able to pitch through it. With DeGrom, and we talked about this during the season, it seems like DeGrom doesn't like to pitch with any discomfort. As soon as he pitches with discomfort, he's basically out of commission. So maybe Max Scherzer can, edge him on a little bit. Like, hey, you got to pitch to a little bit of discomfort. You're probably not going to, tear it completely. And let's be honest, if you tear it completely, the season's probably over with DeGrom. And, let's just hope that, DeGrom is going through his, training and strengthening that UCL just like they do with Tommy John patients, strengthen that ligament, strengthen that area so he won't have problems going forward. Let's hope. Again, with Scherzer, in the playoffs, he had that dead arm with the Dodgers. Sometimes he has that back issue, but he's a workhorse. This guy came with a black eye, with his eye halfway shut, and he pitched for the Nationals and pitched for the Dodgers. The guy's insane. So I know Scherzer can pitch when he's injured or when he's hurt or with discomfort. So I'm not worried about that. If Carlos Carrasco can stay healthy, you got another guy who's in his mid-30s in this rotation who we're counting on. Taijuan Walker, I think, is going to be the X factor in this rotation, depending on if the Mets don't do nothing else. Even if they do something else, I think Taijuan Walker is the X factor for the entire rotation. Obviously, if DeGrom gets injured and he's out for a long period of time, the Mets are in trouble. But say if DeGrom and Scherzer are healthy, the biggest X factor on this Mets team is Taijuan Walker. And it's not about health. His health is fine. Last year, he lost all his energy. He didn't have the stamina to continue throughout the whole season and pitch well. It was obvious. He hasn't pitched a full season in 3 years, after his injuries and Tommy John and all that. So what you have to think about is if Taijuan Walker can get that stamina up and don't get exhausted in the second half. We saw what he done in the first half. He has that good of stuff to pitch that well. If he doesn't exhaust himself and he finally has that full year under his belt, I think he's going to be the X factor in this rotation. You know, Tyler McGill shows that he has that demeanor. He has that Jacob deGrom demeanor, like I'm going to go out there and I'm going to dominate. He don't have the stuff like deGrom, but he's good enough to be in this rotation. You know, David Peterson was injured most of last year. I don't know what we're going to get out of him. We'll have to wait and see in spring training. Oh, but that's an option as well. That's a depth piece. But I do think the Mets are going to get, I think they're going to go after Rodon. It's a matter of other teams are going to be after him. So it's just a matter of do the Mets want him that much? You know, Rodon is another injury prone guy. He had a shoulder injury last year. So, you know, maybe you get a little bit of a discount, but I think he's going to get 3 or 4 years around $15 to $16 million. And I don't know if the Mets are willing to give that, but, you know, I think it's a low risk, high reward situation. When he's healthy, he is an excellent pitcher, and that can only help the rotation. So, obviously, health is the main thing with any team, but especially with the Mets. Yeah, you know, there was a rumor that the Braves were like talking about Anthony Rizzo. They were talking about Matt Chapman. They were talking about Olsen as well. So, you know, look, I'm not going to say the Atlanta Braves are stupid because they did win a World Series. They figured it out when the Mets were, you know, twiggling their thumbs and worrying about nonsense when they had the opportunity to, while they were still in first place before the deadline, to make moves to upgrade this team. And even though they had a pretty good feeling that DeGrom was going to be out the rest of the year, they should have still did everything they can to get a starting pitcher in here to help out. Maybe we would have held on to first place. Who knows? Or a wild card spot. But I'm not going to – no. If I was the Braves, I would sign Freddie Freeman. But at the end of the day, if you can get Matt Olson, who is basically the same as Freeman was at Olson's age, and he's a lot cheaper. Yes, they have to give up prospects, but the Braves have a foundation with Acuna and Albies and Swanson. So they have that core. So they're willing to give up prospects. And to save them $160 million over 6 years to get Olsen might be a better option for them. And let's be honest, who's going to say no to Atlanta Braves team who basically got a whole new outfield in the middle of the year and changed their whole season around? So I'm not going to completely go crazy on the GM and the front office of the Braves because they clearly know what they're doing. So we have to wait and see on that front. I can see Freeman going to the Dodgers. That seems like a perfect fit, honestly. You know, Munson can go back to his regular position at second, and that'll just make the Dodgers that much tougher to beat. Yeah, you see, Hayden, we were just talking about with Hayden, with Muncy. Muncy's natural position is second base. So I think that'll only help Muncy to play second base, and you know, that's perfectly fine because then Freeman can play first. So, you know, the Dodgers seem like they don't care. Look, they had Seager as their shortstop, and they still traded for Justin Turner. I mean, not Justin Turner, excuse me, Trey Turner, and put him at second base. So we know with the Dodgers, if you can get an all-star caliber player, they're gonna bring him in, and they'll figure out where to play him. That's what the Dodgers do. That's what good teams do. You figure out where you're gonna play him. All right, what else we got? Let's see. Do you think the Mets sign Kyle Schwarber can attempt to play outfield, first base, and be a number 3 catcher? Do they sign Nelson Cruz, who is a DH? Well, if you're going to sign Kyle Schwarber, it's probably going to be for a DH, basically. I don't want Kyle Schwarber as playing the outfield at all. I think he's a joke. Yeah, he can play first base every now and then, but he's not great defensively. And, I don't think Kyle Schwarber makes a lot of sense for the Mets, only because he's basically a bigger version and more powerful version of Dominic Smith. Can't play any position well, and is basically a DH. He can hit a lot more home runs than Dominic Smith, but I don't see a guy who's probably going to get 4 years, about $70 million. I don't see the Mets going that route because they still got to have Cano around, who's probably going to get a chance to be the everyday DH. At the moment, you still got Davis, who's probably going to be a DH for the most part. So I think the Mets have DH options. Nelson Cruz, he still shows he has power, but I don't think the Mets are going to give. If it's a 1-year deal, maybe they'll take a chance on Nelson Cruz. But I think the Mets have options within the organization when it comes to the DH at the moment. And it looks like the Mets are going to probably keep Cano around. And I think we're going to wait and see, because when spring training happens, I think the Mets are going to give every opportunity for Cano to be the everyday DH. And if he's not producing, I really have a feeling that the Mets are just going to pay him his money and get rid of him. So, and look, I did this video about 2 or 3 months ago. 5 Mets who are not coming back in 2022. I put J.D. Davis at the bottom of the list because I think J.D. Davis, out of Dominic Smith, Jeff McNeil, position player wise, I think has the best offensive, future, in my opinion. I think J.D. Davis, if he's healthy, can hit 25 plus home runs and bat 280, because we've seen that in 2019. He was a guy who hits for average, but can also hit 25 plus home runs. And I think J.D. Davis can do that. I think J.D. Davis, when healthy, can be a great DH. And I think it just makes sense that J.D. Davis is the everyday DH. I like J.D. Davis not on the field. I think he's terrible. But putting him in the middle of that lineup as a DH, I think it's only going to be better. You got to remember, the big reason why the Mets did not have a really good offensive season was because J.D. Davis was hurt most of the year. I was at that game when he got hit by the pitch on his wrist in Philadelphia, the first series of the year for the Mets. And I never forget, I was on the first base side in the upper deck. And when that ball hit his wrist, I heard it from the upper deck. And I tell you right now, guys, that didn't sound pretty. And when a guy who performs with his hands offensively and needs his hands to hit, I think it affected him the entire year. But I do think J.D. Davis, people are very down on J.D. Davis. And I'm not sure why. I'd rather be more down on Jeff McNeil, who was a player who was supposed to hit for over 300 and decided to become a power hitter. And I don't think he's changing anytime soon. And Dominic Smith, I don't think he's as good as player as Met fans are giving him credit for, because everybody looked at 2020 as a year where, Dominic Smith broke out. He's going to be the player that he was in 2020, and don't realize that there's another 100 games that would have had been seen from Dominic Smith, from Michael Conforto. But yet, as I said last week in the stream, people are very quick to get rid of Michael Conforto after the year he had last year, but Dominic Smith had just as bad a year as Michael Conforto, but yet people want to keep Dominic Smith, when Dominic Smith hasn't had a full year of a successful, consistent year. So if I had to choose which player out of the 3 that I want to keep, because I think I trust him more in a role, that's J.D. Davis over Jeff McNeil and Dominic Smith. Because I think J.D. Davis is a hitter. And this team, if the pitching's going to stay healthy, this offense can be powerful and can be one of the best offensive teams in the league. And that's not including who the Mets might still get. And I do think they're going to get Chris Bryant. So, with that said, I say no on Schwarber and no on Nelson Cruz. Steven Mets went after Freddie Freeman. Nah, you got Pete Alonso. It doesn't make sense. Pete Alonso is basically the second face of your franchise other than DeGrom. So, yeah, with Gavin Lux, that's interesting because I don't know, honestly. Like I said, the Dodgers find ways to play all these guys, with days off and everything like that. I just think they'll keep them. Or unless if they get if they get a guy like Olsen, maybe Gavin Lux is in that deal. He's cheap. That's what the A's want. That might be a part of a trade package. We'll see. Yeah, Nimmo and Scott Boras, that was said last week. I'm not surprised. A lot of these guys are moving over to Boras a year before they are free agents because they know Boras gets them their money. So I'm not going crazy over it. Like I said, the Mets have the money if they want to pay any player. Just a matter of are they willing to do it. I don't know what Nimmo's projected to get. I guess I have to look into that. But, I mean, can you see Nimmo get a $100 million contract? I don't know. He's injury prone. Is he projected as a center fielder? There's no coincidence. And I don't think people took that into consideration why the Mets got Starlin Marte. It's not that they thought Marte is an upgrade. They know Nimmo's contract is up after this year. So if you put Nimmo in a corner outfield, now he's going to get paid like a corner outfield. He's not going to get paid as a center fielder. And overall, center fielders get paid a lot of money, more than most corner outfielders that are mid-range type players, which Nimmo is. I'm not talking about Bryce Harpers of the world and guys like that. I think it's smart that the Mets made that. Look, the Mets made that Marte move signing because they knew that there's a chance that Nimmo might actually go somewhere else. But they're also not stupid, and I think financially it's a smart move. And listen, I wasn't a proponent on getting Marte at first because, he is in his mid-30s. How long is he going to be a center fielder? For maybe 2 years at the quality that we've seen him over the last couple of years with the Marlins and the A's. I don't think Marte was a necessity, so to speak, but I'm not going to complain about it because he is a solid player. We have a leadoff hitter now. And I think Nimmo's best position in this lineup is number 2 because he can take pitches, give Marte the ability to steal. He takes a lot of pitches. He's a walk machine, and he's a guy who can, turn that bat around on a 98 miles an hour fastball and hit a ball into the gap. So I think that's a perfect 1-2 for this lineup. So, Boras and Nimmo, well, Nimmo's going to get paid. It's just that simple. Just all the Mets willing to give Nimmo the contract that he wants. Daly, I already gave you a shout out, buddy. It's all good, man. Don't worry. I got you. All right, guys. So, what else are we going to talk about? Let's see what else is on the agenda for today. Okay, so we're going to talk about go away from the Mets, go away from the MLB lockout. Let's talk about the Hall of Fame voting. The last time I checked the Hall of Fame voting, there was 3 guys, or David Ortiz, Barry Bonds, and Roger Clemens, all had enough votes at about an hour ago when I checked it to make the Hall of Fame. They had enough votes. I think Clemens was the one that was like 76.2%, who was the one, there was only 50% of the voting at the moment when I checked it. I think Clemens is on the border. He still might not be in, but I think Bonds and Ortiz is going to make it. He already has like 83% of the vote, or 87. I forgot what it was, but Ortiz is going to make it. Bonds is most likely going to make it. So I think overall it's probably going to be 3 guys, and the one guy who was just missing it at 70% was Scott Rowland. Met fans know him well. He was a Mets killer. So Ortiz, Bonds, and Clemens at the moment have enough votes to make the Hall of Fame. Again, all three of these guys are Hall of Fame worthy. We all know each one of them had steroids a part of their name now. But let's be honest, Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds, before steroids, were already Hall of Famers. So I think they should be in, and I don't care about the steroids. Honestly, I think if you have the numbers, you go into the Hall of Fame. Just if you were caught using or were known to be using steroids, I think somewhere in the Baseball Hall of Fame, they should actually have an asterisk next to the plaque stating that they were accused or found using steroids with testing or word of mouth, or there's been proof. I think that's what they should do. I think it's, the Baseball Hall of Fame is about history, right? We talk about this all over the news. You see it in, with political stuff over the last couple of years. People want to erase history, right? I'd rather talk about the history. Having kids, when I have kids, or I would like to tell them, Barry Bonds was a great player. He's a home run, record-wise, he has the most home runs, but he did steroids. And I'm going to explain that to younger generations. I don't see why people are so scared of history. Not all history was good history, obviously. Not all history was bad history. But every part of history, no matter if it's U.S. history or baseball history, everybody should know about history, no matter what topic you're talking about. And the same goes for the Baseball Hall of Fame. When I walk into the Baseball Hall of Fame, I want to know Shoeless Joe Jackson. I want to know what he did with the White Sox, right? I want to know what Ty Cobb, who was known to be one of the most racist baseball players known to man, and he was up front saying it. He wasn't hiding it. But he's in the Hall of Fame, right? It's just that simple. So at the end of the day, guys, the Hall of Fame is about history. It's about numbers. It's about, if you put up the numbers that are Hall of Fame worthy, you should be inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. The problem now and forever, too many of these writers that have votes are people who have agendas. And if a player who have the numbers to be in the Hall of Fame, they didn't treat them right, there's a pretty good chance they're probably not going to vote for them. And my problem is with these writers, oh, he did steroids, I'm not going to vote for him. That's not the problem. The problem is the Hall of Fame is about history. Put these guys in, no matter how they got the numbers, steroids or not, put them in the Hall of Fame. If they did steroids, you put an asterisk on it, on the plaque, on anywhere where they have info about that player. Put it on about that. If the player doesn't like it, don't show up to the ceremony, right? Hall of Fames, plaques, statues are all about history. It's that simple. So I don't see why anybody would be upset about that, because let's be honest, guys. David Ortiz is beloved in Beantown, in Boston. Why? Because it was a guy that the Red Sox took off the scrap heap basically from the Twins, and he became a great player for the Red Sox, and he's a fan favorite. You think Red Sox fans are going to care? Are going to give back their world championships? You think the Yankees or the Blue Jays are going to give back wins because they have Roger Clemens? You think the Giants are going to give back all that money that they got from ticket sales because of Barry Bonds? No. So put them in. That's just my opinion. I want to see what the comments say about that. All right. Bill, what's up, man? Thank you for tuning in. Exactly. Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. It's that simple. I know that's a little crazy when it comes to people don't think players or coaches should bet on sports in general, I agree. But let's be honest, guys. Pete Rose was one of the best players of all time in Major League Baseball. I mean, come on, put him in. Again, history. Put him in the Hall of Fame and say he betted on baseball. That's why he was banned from Major League Baseball and the Hall of Fame because of this. That's all you have to say. If Pete Rose don't want to come to the ceremony, that's on him. When the induction ceremony happens, he don't have to show up. But his history can be known at the Baseball Hall of Fame. When a kid who wasn't born during his time, or a kid that was born today, and in 15 years, his father takes him to the Baseball Hall of Fame and says, hey, Pete Rose was one of the best players in Major League Baseball, one of the greatest players of all time, one of the hard-nosed players, great players of all time. But he was banned from baseball for a very long time because he bet on baseball. He bet supposedly for his team to win. Supposedly he never bet against his team to lose, but it's still a no-no as a player. So put him in. History is history. Just explain what they did. That's it. I don't see what's so hard about that. Any Hall of Fame, the basketball, the hockey, the baseball, the football, history in general, U.S. history. Information should be said, no matter what it is, good or bad. It should be known. It should be out in the open for everybody to see. It's just that simple, guys. Well, let's be honest. I think the Mets have better odds than the Yankees to make the World Series because, listen, the Yankees don't have no rotation. And do you trust Garrett Cole without the sticky stuff? I don't. So I think right now the Mets should have better odds to make the World Series over the Yankees. I don't think the Yankees are that good. The Yankees have too many question marks. Yeah, of course. But at the end of the day, there's players in the Hall of Fame. And I just said it, Ty Cobb was one of the most racist human beings in baseball. But yet, he's in the Hall of Fame. Why? Because he put up numbers that were Hall of Fame worthy. All you have to do is talk about his history. That's it. It's not that hard. It's not that hard, guys. And you have to respect the fact that the Baseball Hall of Fame is only about the performance of players. It shouldn't have nothing to do about his attitude, his political status, or his racial status, or what color he is, or is he a racist? It's not a good thing, obviously, but the Baseball Hall of Fame is not about good people. Any Hall of Fame is not about good people. It's about the numbers you put up in the sport you played. That's it. If you want to explain other details about what he did or who he was as a person, you can put that in the history books, in the Hall of Fame. Put it a part of his plaque as an asterisk or information under his plaque about what he's done or what he's been known as a person. That's it. Yeah, Kendrick, exactly. Thank you for that comment. Exactly. Too many of these writers talk about integrity of the game, but these are the same writers and same reporters that turned the other way when guys were sticking needles in their asses taking steroids. Why? Because it was for the good of the game, right? When the strike happened in 94, baseball was basically on the track to failure. What brought baseball back? The home run record between Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, right? That's what brought baseball back to its tip of the iceberg. And I was, in that range where I was a baseball fan, but I wasn't really caring about in 94, I was about what? Not 7 years old, 6 years old. So I wasn't really focused on the MLB strike. But The home run record brought back baseball fans, brought baseball back to America's pastime. That did it. So the reporters don't get no slack, don't get no heat when they turned the other way, when they knew guys were taking steroids. They were in the locker rooms seeing these guys sticking needles in their asses. I mean, come on. It's that simple, guys. It's not rocket science. It's common sense. The same reporters, the John Heymans of the world, the Mike Pumas, the Joel Shermans, Ken Rosendals, we can go on and on. All these veteran writers who have votes were the same ones in the locker room seeing guys taking steroids, but they turned the other way. Why? Because guess what, guys? If there's no baseball, if there's no popularity in the sport, that means they don't have jobs as baseball reporters. Now, of course, they might have found jobs elsewhere, but their passion is be baseball writers, baseball reporters. It's an honor to do that. So they turn the other way, just like managers turn the other way, just like Major League owners turn the other way, just like the Major League commissioners turn the other way. Don't let them fool you. So these same writers who are not voting for Bonds, Clemens, Ortiz, and go on and on about these steroid guys, are the same guys who turned their backs when they were giving themselves the needles. So don't let them fool you. They are the same freaking people that turn their backs for the good of the game. That's it. That's why these guys should be in the Hall of Fame. Anybody who's done anything wrong. Now, Shuler Stowe Jackson, we know what he did, right? He's tried to shave points. He tried to basically screw his own team for money, for bookies, right? You know, the White Sox, the Black Sox, all that stuff. And the entire team was banned, right? That's something different. That was players who were manipulating how they played to make money off the field because they did not they wanted their owner to pay them more money salary-wise, and the owner said no. So to go against their owner, they took money from bookies and outside sources to lose games, to lose World Series. That's different. When probably 85% of Major League Baseball were taking steroids, it's not really an advantage anymore. And at the end of the day, did it really hurt the game? It helped the game. It turned that home run race turned little kids into baseball fans that are big baseball fans today. So don't let that fool you. Popularity matters. That's why the owners turn their heads. That's why the commissioners turn their heads. The reporters turn their heads. And even players who never took steroids turn their heads the other way because they know it's for the betterment of the game. AB, how you doing? So, obviously, you know my take on it. Every player who is put up numbers Hall of Fame worthy should be in the Hall of Fame. Just let them to say what they did on their plaque, on the information desk, anywhere where the plaque is about the information of the player. Explain exactly why or what this player has done. And that's just that simple. I would respect that more than not putting them in at all. When I go to the Baseball Hall of Fame, I don't want to walk around and not see Barry Bonds, who's one of the best players of all time. I don't want to see no Clemens. Even though I can't stand Clemens, he's a Hall of Fame pitcher. It's just that simple. So, guys, it's past 6 o'clock, and that is my hour of ranting, answering questions, talking Mets baseball, talking about the lockout, talking about the Hall of Fame. Once again, guys, I really appreciate all the support. Don't forget, guys, if you haven't, hit on that like button right now, guys. So if people miss the live stream, they can watch the replay later on. If you're new to the channel, please hit on that subscribe button, everybody. Once again, shout out to Daily Mets Coverage for tuning in. Check out his channel, guys. Subscribe to his channel. Everybody else, have a good night. Hopefully the MLB lockout in a week or two can get done so we can talk about real news, with free agency and trade rumors about our New York Mets and baseball. We can get excited about spring training, talk about records, talk about rosters, lineups, pitcher rotations, everything we need to talk about, and we can get this baseball season going. Once again, guys, I really appreciate all the support. Please check out the video that I did yesterday about Starling Marte projections for the 2022 season. If you haven't checked that out, please do. It's already up. Hit on that like button, guys. New to the channel, hit on that subscribe button. Appreciate all the support, guys. I'll see you guys next week, Tuesday, Mets Hot Stove Live. I really appreciate it, guys. As always, Met fans, let's go Mets. Have a good night, guys.